Hello out there, and welcome to my channel. I'm MadXStitcher, and today I want to talk about the Creative Options Thread Organizer. Now, I bought this thing last week, and now I just want to take a little bit of time to talk about my thoughts and opinions on this thing, since I've had a little bit of time to get to know it. And there are a few things I want to state about it right out of the box before we really get going. And it does have some problems. I do like it, actually, and I do intend to keep using it. So this is a critical review, but it's critical because I want to like it a little bit more than I do. It has some issues, like I said, and let's go ahead and talk about those really quickly. Now, the first issue that I have is that the hinges on the sides are on opposite edges over here, which means that when you are trying to get between your different sides, you have to flip it over this way. And that's a pretty big issue for me because we have our starting corner up here on this side, and then when we flip it over, the starting corner is on the same side. Because when you use numbered bobbins, it tends to start up in the upper left-hand corner. So when both sides start in the upper left-hand corner, that means that if you're using multiple lines of floss, or you've got different things in your container that you're using, it's going to be very poorly weighted, and all of the weight winds up on one side as opposed to being a little bit more evenly distributed. And that's why on this side I have all of my over-dyed floss kind of hanging out over here. It's not creating the best counterbalance, but that is what it's trying to do. Now, if the hinges were on the same side, so right here and right here, you would flip it over like this. So then you'd have one starting corner right here, and then one starting corner right here. So they'd be on complete opposite ends of the container, and it would be just a little bit easier to use, and it wouldn't fall over so much. Basically, that's the problem that I have with it in that regard, is that it just wants to fall over if you don't have it on a perfectly level surface. And I have had it now twice since I've had this either fall over, or just I picked it up and the lid wasn't closed right, and everything wound up on the floor. So that is kind of a problem, so you have to make sure that the lid is closed very, very well, and that you have it on a good flat surface. Otherwise, when you're using it, it could just all go everywhere, and that's no good, especially when you've got about 460 skeins of floss in there. Now, another thing I do want to point out is that it does hold a little bit more per container than your normal craft box does. This will hold somewhat comfortably 10 skeins of floss. It might be a little bit more comfortable with about 8 or 9, but it can hold 10. You might be able to cram a little bit more, but I really wouldn't recommend it. And the reason for that is something I'll get into a little bit more later on. And the reason that this is a problem is that the bobbins have to be upright when you have them in your container. So when you pull them out, it tends to want to pull all of its neighbors out with it, and that's no good. And then you kind of need to use both hands, which I can't do right now because of the microphone, so it's extra awkward to get everything back in there. So if you're trying to stitch with one hand in the box and one hand on your needle, like I think a lot of us probably do, it gets frustrating really quickly. And like I said, it's just because the bobbins don't fit sideways into the container. No matter what you do, there's a little bit of a gap there, and it wants to kind of go elsewhere. Like, I can't push it all the way up flush against the edge of the container there. It won't go. So what I have had to start doing to combat this is I took my plastic bobbins that you have right here, and I've cut about 1/2 centimeter off of the bottom, which is a little bit awkward, but you can see it right there, hopefully a little bit better. You still have the notches in there, so I can put the thread in there, but it's not very nice. But it does mean that I can actually put my bobbins in there sideways, which means that I can see the color of the floss when I have it wrapped on there. I can still see the number when it's on the corner. And when I pull out a bobbin, it's not going to pull out all of its neighbors because the floss will be running with the grain of its neighbor rather than against. So that's kind of a problem right there. And the other problem that I have, because you can't put the bobbin sideways, is that the lid doesn't close. So we have these little notches right here on the inside of the lid, and I don't really know what those are all about. They're very weird. I don't understand them, but That means that when we try to close it, that notch that's right here gets stuck on the top of the bobbin. This side where I don't have any floss will close very easily. This side, you really have to shove it down to make sure that it's closed. And I didn't do that at first, and all of my floss wound up on the floor, and I had to put it all back in. But that one little thing, the fact that the floss won't go in there sideways, is kind of an issue for me because it creates so many other issues. And when I bought this, I knew that I was going to be doing a review on it, so I didn't look at the reviews on Amazon. I wanted to go in with my own clear slate. I didn't want any preconceived ideas about this thing. All I knew about it was that someone on Reddit said that they could put their whole DMC collection into one box. So when I started getting to know this thing and realized that it was having problems, that's when I went to go look at the reviews on Amazon, and then someone very helpfully pointed out that nowhere in the title, nowhere in the description, nowhere anywhere does this ever mention embroidery. It doesn't mention floss. It doesn't say that it's for bobbins. It says that it's a thread organizer, and what it's meant to be organizing are spools of thread for your sewing machine. And that's why it has these little notches right here on the edges of the compartment so that you can reach out and pull out your spool of thread for your sewing machine. So that's not really a fault of the product, since the product isn't made for embroidery floss. But it is kind of a little bit of a drawback, and it's why I've started cutting off a ½ centimeter from my thousands of bobbins that I have lying around. But I do really like this otherwise. It does have those problems, but those problems are pretty small, and they're easy to get around with just a little bit of work. All I have is just a decent paper cutter, some plastic bobbins, and some time, and there we go. But I do like it. Like I said, I do plan on using this. I have 2 of them. The other one with my DMC floss, and I can confirm that it will hold the entire line of the DMC cotton floss. You can't hold with it the cotton plus the satin and the variegated and the light effects and everything else. If you want to hold everything by DMC, you will need 2 of these boxes. But I have put my DMC floss in it, realized that I don't like it that way, so I've been slowly taking it back out, putting it on these chopped up bobbins, and then putting it back in. So that's why I didn't show you the DMC one. But I will put this in my Amazon store, as well as a listing where you can get 1,000 bobbins for pretty cheap price. I think it's about $20, but I'm not sure. But I'll put both of those in my Amazon store so that you guys can check this out as well, if this seems like something you'd really want. I know that the thing with the bobbins not fitting is probably going to be a make or break for a lot of people, though. It almost was for me. But hopefully you guys found this interesting and helpful. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comments below, and I will get to them as soon as I can. But until then, thank you so much for liking, commenting, subscribing, all that fun stuff. Make sure you check me out on social media, and I will see you next time. Bye! Thank you for watching. If you would like to support future videos and get some neat stuff in return, please head over to my Patreon page. Your support means a lot to me and goes a long way. If you're not in a position to donate, consider sharing this video with your friends to help this channel grow. Otherwise, please enjoy this goat.